Thank you so much for being with us. Welcome to Redefining Success. I'm Eric L. Dunavant, the Mindset Disruption Strategist, and joining me today is Brian Oullette, who is the founder of Ask My Advisor and author of the book, Referral Secrets of the Elite Trusted Advisor, which I think is coming out in the next month or so. So by the time this episode hits, it should be on shelves. We're going to get a chance to talk about some software that he's developed. We're going to get a chance to talk about him coaching his kids in sports and what he's learned along the way. We're going to get a chance to talk just about the book, and it is going to be a great interview. So, Brian, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Eric. This is it's interesting. Some of the stuff you and I have been talking about recently. It should be an interesting conversation here.
It's going to be a great conversation. It's going to be a great conversation. So I told you how this starts. So it's Saturday afternoon. Brian's up in Seattle, but he was telling me a story that at times they have flown some crawfish up for a crawfish boil. So we could be having a crawfish boil or just a good old fashioned hamburger, hot dog barbecue in my backyard. I've invited all my friends over, and I would love for you to introduce yourself to my friends, if you would.
Well, it's fine. You're taking me back to some of these crawfish boils we had up here back. It's been a little while, but some good old people from Louisiana we spent some time with. You know, it's funny. My wife and I talk about this a lot. We tend to ask a lot of questions. And so sometimes we're not a great duo because we ask so many questions and we meet people. But a lot of it is because we genuinely have interest in, people, where they're from and kind of their backgrounds and stuff. But if I'm thinking if we're sitting around, I always like learning about like someone's neck of the woods, like even things you and I have talked about down Louisiana is a part of the country I've not been to. Yeah. I know a lot about it. But I'm really interested in that. We talked about the lake you live, by, and I just learned something new today. There's a 24-mile bridge that goes across the lake that I had no clue about. But it's funny in meeting people, especially you run business and stuff. There's this fine line of it's a weird balance of of talking too much about what you do or not talking at all. Like this, you want to be humble, and oftentimes it's just more of the conversational questions that develop and move people through and learning about each other. That's tends to be my favorite way of getting to know somebody or share my story is by asking questions, which is kind of seems like an odd way, but questions seem to be a good opener for things, many things.
So I'm going to push you a little bit. Tell my audience. So the question's on you. So what's maybe more difficult this time is you've got to answer the question. You don't get to ask the questions. You have to answer. So tell us about you.
It's interesting. Well, I'll tell about me, kind of my background a little bit. I'm born and raised. I'm in Bellevue, Washington. So just a suburb out of Seattle, Washington. We're home of Microsoft, a company a lot of people have heard of. So Microsoft's right at the door. Amazon, downtown Bellevue is becoming kind of Amazon's, not just headquarters too. It looks like kind of their main headquarters. I think they've added like 6 million square feet of office space, just about 4 minutes from my house, downtown Bellevue, which is pretty interesting with, people coming back from COVID and from work. But I've spent most of my time, graduated from the University of Washington in 94. You and I have talked about this. I lived out, the only time I moved away was I lived out in Chicago for a little bit. So I was born and raised here. I enjoy living here. The weather, everything, that's normal to me. So it was good for me to move out to Chicago. And I knew I wanted to get in finance, right? Even through high school. The movie Wall Street had come out, and not the best movie to base your career off of, but it was an interesting movie. And we happened to have career day right around that time, and a couple stockbrokers from Dane Bosworth, I think it was at the time, came in. I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And it was kind of a seed in the back of my head. And through college, that's what I did. I worked with some family friends, did the cold calling, got to know the business a little bit, graduated, and I'm like, well, I want to get in this business, and what better time to move away than when you're 22, right? You move away. That's when you don't have 3 kids, a wife, and, much more responsibility. So that's what I did. Lived in Chicago, started on the Chicago Board of Trade, which I'd seen the trading floors like on TV, the movie Trading Places, the commodities floor, this, but I'd never been in the middle of it. So that was a really interesting way to learn the business, and had a great time for that year out there. Ended up working with the private client group, got my licenses, my 6, my 7, I took the 6 And then the guys I'm working for were like, well, let's get you to take the 7. I'm like, wait, doesn't that override the 6? But it was good practice for me taking tests, but did that, cut my teeth in Chicago. Then I wanted to get back to Seattle and build my private client business. And that's what I did. So I did that for a decade. I worked with, you probably remember Payne Weber, the old Payne Weber name. That was got into their training program and then stayed with them during the acquisition with UBS. They moved over to Oppenheimer Company. And when I moved over there, the local Fox affiliate here, Fox Morning News, was starting a morning show. And they needed some money guys. And so we knew some people there, so they invited us down, and they ended up bringing us on for almost 4 years. They built a studio in my Oppenheimer Company office. But for almost 4 years, I did 2 to 4 to 5 live market updates every day on this morning show. Well, if you remember 2000. Yep. We started about March of 2000 with the market crashing. I think it was April, right? So to report during that bust, for 3.5 years, I think did over 3,000 TV interviews. But it was kind of interesting. I've only been in finance, so the media side was kind of an interesting other background to be in, and it was great getting exposure for someone young in the business. But yeah, so did that. So. Hey, we're in a barbecue. I'm talking too much about myself here. Talking about
your podcast.
It's my podcast. It's all about me. But so I guess that kind of leads up to where we're at with Ask My Advisor. So it makes sense to kind of give you the we've talked about this, Eric, about the whole idea is like you set out for things to be a certain way, right? And for me, I was going to be a financial advisor for 20, 30, 40 years or whatever. And I really put the plan in place and did that and had some early success to build that foundation. And then things shifted, going through 2000 for someone young in the business. That was a traumatic thing. Like I only knew the market going straight up. So I knew through 95, 96, 97, 98, I've talked about this, and this actually plays into the business now, but I was getting referrals. I probably had no business getting, but the market was going up. People were feeling good. And then you go through a crash and nobody taught you about that, right? You always heard about the Great Depression stuff, but that was a pretty traumatic thing. And even for people that, kind of a funny side note, even for people that were protected through, we had at Oppenheimer, we had a hedge fund group, like a true hedge, funds that were actually hedging themselves against markets pullbacks. And Takis Spragas, who runs Alkion now, it's like a $50 billion hedge fund. He was about $250 million back then, but he was a technology manager. And I'd rolled when I moved over, when a Louisiana family, one of my good family friends, had all their money with Julian Robertson, Tiger Fund. Yeah. Right before that whole collapse. But we had moved a significant piece of their money over to this technology fund. And through that crash of 2000, they were at 0% for the year. NASDAQ lost, 67, 80%. He protected everything through the crash. And I had clients that were like, well, yeah, but that was just 0%. I was like, do you not get you protected your money through the biggest crash, the dot-com burst. Yeah. Not only that, you protected. Now you don't have to make up all this ground. You're starting from there. But it was those type of things were kind of just fed me. I was like, man, it couldn't be better what happened with this. And people didn't understand that. I get it. I get it from the client side. I totally, we're all humans, right? Yeah. But I just saw, so anyway, so kind of lost my love for the business and then sold it in 2004. Started a sports apparel company, Shoe Wallet Active Gear, which are little nylon pouches. They've been around for decades. I had one when I was a kid, but I bought the domain shoewallet.com in 2003. Okay. Began doing that, built that business out, brought in some investors, and got that product on the Today Show, on New York One, a lot of newspapers, magazines, because we were really proponents of people carrying ID when they ran. Most people run without ID. It's a big problem. So had some success there, had some big clients, had, a lot of private label clients, but did that. But there was a problem with that business. And it's, for me, coming from a family business, my parents run, literally, it's a ma and pa auto part, marine part store. They've had since I was 0, since they've had it for over 50 years. And they run it together. They got a few employees and they've had it for a long time. And I watched over the years, you've got a retail business, you've got all this stock and inventory and stuff. Well, you're paying rent on every piece of stock on the shelf. Every minute it doesn't sell, you're essentially paying rent on that space. And So with Shoe Wall, I really wanted to have a single product, be laser focused. I wanted something that was easy to ship, wasn't fragile, ship, all these things. Private label business was good. I got clients like Susan Jacoma down in Texas, but Dunkin' Donuts did shoe wallet, private label shoe wallets. We did them for Skechers shoes, UCLA, like all kinds of brands. But it was a hard good. I had to, there was a cost there. So as I kind of evolved that business, it was 2010. I was talking to a sports agent buddy of mine, and now that I've talked about this, but you always hear over the years of these athletes having problems with their money, and I'd heard it, and for me, it was always in the background, but I always kind of paralleled it with lottery winners, right? Statistically, lottery winners don't do real well with that money. It's a crazy thing. You think you're coming out all this money, but just statistically, and the way I really looked at that. So I was talking to a sports agent buddy of mine. He was building a database of sports agents and athletes. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I never considered working with, athletes or celebrities. And as I looked into it more, he shared that Sports Illustrated article, How and Why Athletes Go Broke. And that was a mind-boggling article. I'm sure you remember that from 2009. It's a big article. It's been around for a long time, but they ran through the stats of 60 to 78% of pro athletes with not 10 or 20 years down the road, within 2 to 5 years, they're having major financial issues. And really for most of these athletes, this, you're not going to replace that income, right? You may get a good job and replace, 50, 60 cents on the dollar is going to be difficult, right? There's the outliers, the Tom Brady's who just signed an amazing TV deal, but that's a small percentage of people. So as I looked into that a little bit more, I was like, I looked at that as, boy, these financial advisors, these attorneys, the accountants taking care of these athletes, over 60% of them are failing these clients. So I saw that as an opportunity. So I researched the industry. Within 3 weeks, I launched Pro Athlete Direct. And that was through that channel. Was selling the database of a friend of mine who was a sports agent. And this was great. We got media attention. It was kind of niche-y. People were like, oh, this is kind of cool, athletes and stuff. And then and we're getting some really, a lot of former athletes turned advisor, turned, accountant, whatever. But they're coming to me and saying, hey, this access is great, but what do I do with it? I said, well, I didn't think about that. I thought you just want the access, right? So I began building a coaching program around that whole idea. Sports agents are really a goldmine center of influence relationship. I mean, and it's not just their athlete clients. They're a hub to many, many deep connections. And so we built the coaching around that. And as time went on, I began to notice some things about this. We had a pretty good system for building a relationship from nothing to something. But you're still, and even though a lot of these, members of mine were former athletes, we had, Super Bowl winners and, Olympians and national team captains, that had turned advisor or that I was coaching. I realized, what, there's a center of influence that's far superior to these sports agents. And not only is it far superior, all these advisors that I'm working with already have relationships with these people. So we don't have to go from nothing. We have it already. It's the existing clients of these advisors. That was really a light bulb moment I had. And I realized so oftentimes in business, I look back when I was an advisor or financial advisor and then coaching all these advisors, we're all about getting the new business. And that's kind of in our DNA a lot of times. We oftentimes don't look at going back into our existing client base. Right. They vote every month, they pay a fee, they have money with you, they do a transaction with you, anything, they vote with you with their dollars. Right. And words only go so far. It's ultimately, your wallet dictates how you feel about something, right? We vote with our wallets. And I really began to look into that a whole lot more and began to quickly narrow it down to not just all your clients. It's all, I've been a big proponent of the Pareto principle. A lot of people, the 80-20 rule, but the top 20% of your clients, the ones that you enjoy working with the most, the ones you have the closest relationships with, the ones you most likely call friend, their families, those things. Let's really focus on that relationship and use this relationship building system we created and strengthening those relationships and then tapping into the people in their lives. And that's really, so if we talk about the Ask My Advisor method, at its core, that's what it is. It's taking even better care of your top clients and then bridging that, tapping into the people 1 degree away. Because, one of the things, I'm at your barbecue, I'm rambling way too much about my business, so hopefully there's some cervezas, being passed around. They're like, all right, listen to this guy. You did say it's my podcast. So
I did say it's your podcast. I did
talk about this stuff a little bit, but so one of the things, we look at this. One of the ways traditionally, I look at how I was trained. Payne Weber had a great training program. Spent a month in Hoboken, and it was a old school, just training. The old Lehman Brothers way, right? You ask for referrals, and we always say we want bait in the water. So asking is better than not asking. Okay, we know statistically most clients will refer their advisor, and most of the time they don't get asked, or they get asked in an odd way. So we always want bait in the water. But is there a better way to bridge that gap to the people 1 degree away from your clients? And another thing, asking oftentimes it's not a it's a lower status thing, because the analogy I always use is my doctor. I love my doctor. He's great. I refer him frequently when people need a GP. I'm like, oh, you got to go see Dr. Nordson, right? I don't want to get done with my appointment with him and have him sit me down and say, okay, here's a piece of paper, write down 3 referrals for me, and then sit and stare at me for 5 minutes while I write those lists down, right? Because I will give the referrals, but I'm going to give them because, to me, we talk about this in the book, actually. We talk about how it goes back to our crocodile mind, right? The cavewoman era, where if I knew where a watering hole was away from where we were all at, and I could bring you to it, my value went up. It was a status play. Referrals are very similar. We love saying, Eric, you got to talk to them. What they're doing at Paradigm, no one else is doing this. You got to talk to him, right? Or, my doctor, she's the best. You got to talk to her. People, it's a status. You're not going to refer somebody that's terrible at what they do, right? Most likely they're not going to continue being your advisor for much longer. And number 2, it's because that drops your status. So what could we do? So the whole idea is we've built the system. How do we tap into those people 1 degree away? And one of the benefits of social media now is the average person, between family, friends, work associates, school, all these things, is connected to over 600 people. One person has a reach of 600 right now. So if we use the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and look at your top 10 clients, it's over 6,000 people that 1 degree away, that mathematically, who most closely resembles those top 10 clients? It's got to be the people in their lives. It's not going to be the stranger on the street. Sure. It's not going to be the stranger at the seminar someone runs or whatever. It's going to be the people in their lives. And so to tap into those people 1 degree away is we built it. It's the Ask My Advisor method. It's through Q&A. We open up Q&A. We talk about questions a lot, but it's about questions are the single best way to identify someone's pain point, right? If I got a chance to ask you, is this, high level financial advisor, a financial question, and I've got my list of top 10 questions right now, and I'm making a bet inflation's going to be high out there and rates, all these things, right? But I got my list of 10, and I got a chance to talk to Eric right now. Most likely, I'm not going to ask my 10th most important question. I'm going to go right to the top and ask you what my number 1 question is. Well, the beautiful thing about using Q&A in that way is now, if I identify what my pain point is, where I need help with, and you're the expert, you're in business. If people can answer all their questions, there's no need for accountants, attorneys, financial advisors, realtors, right? You on the other side, you're the expert. This is what you do. So the system really was driven by Q&A. I mean, that's at the heart of it. We can talk about that more so in a little bit, but that just kind of gives you a background. We talk about, I talked about, I set out this one way, and then you zigged and zagged and gone this way, but it really got us to this point now where we're very crystal clear about what's going on here. It took a while to get to where we're at, but we're pretty excited about it, especially now because people have more questions than ever right now. I mean, really, there's new questions we haven't had, right? We've never gone through a pandemic. I mean, I guess we went to the Spanish flu, in the, I think it was we weren't around then. Okay.
Right.
So maybe some of the same questions, but.
Yeah. And the closer 50 comes, the longer ago that was. That's the one thing that's kind of hard to remember.
It really is.
Hey, Brian, tell me this. So if you kind of look at, the theme of the show is redefining success. So let's go back to your high school. You're watching Wall Street. You got this idea of what life successfully would look like being a financial advisor. So you're going to go down this route. And you did, right? You did some of that. What were some of the things that you learned along the way around what success wasn't versus what you discovered it was that were different than what you expected going in?
Well, the easy one, this is, I say it's simple, but it seems like it's quite common, is that decision then was driven by the wrong things, right? When I say wrong things, it got me to where I'm at now, so I'm happy for that. So maybe that's not the best way to term it. It was driven. I've been more and more family friends. I've got kids coming out of college right now, and because I went the financial route, I've been having meetings with kids and stuff that are trying to sort things out, and so I get to go back to my 22, 23-year-old self again and share the things that worked really well and the things that didn't work so well. And I think for me, it was having a very narrow scope of what business and what life was as an adult. And so I was driven, let's look at the movie that drove me, where my interest came from. That was a movie, it was Gluttony, right? It was about, and there's nothing wrong with money itself, but the idea of the money in the movie and he wasn't providing high value as a stockbroker. He was purely transactional. He was driven by money in that sense. And so in that regard, is someone, starting out, I was really driven by money. I wanted to be successful. I liked it looked cool, wearing the suits and being in the buildings and fancy lunches, all these things. I think for me, it would have been better to gauge what the reality of that, what the business is. And not to say I wouldn't have gone the same route, because there's great things that came about it. And it got me to where I am now with the software we built. So I will be forever grateful for that. But if I had a chance to do it over again, for me, it's get a better idea of all that's available out there, and try, maybe try a couple different things. One of the things I had some friends do in their 20s. They had jobs where they traveled a lot for work, and they complain about it in the midst of it. But then you look back, it's like, well, you're at an age where you've got the freedom to do that. Right. You just got back from Italy with your 3 kids. It's not an easy. You don't just, hey, it's Friday. Let's pop over to Italy, right?
Right. Yeah. No.
It's harder to do when you have more responsibilities, and when you're, by yourself. Those are the times you want to do those things, and you can learn a whole heck of a lot from in doing that, right? So when we're talking about, for me, going back in time, being able to do it over again, I would look deeper at what's important to me. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I don't know if that's a totally fair question. I don't know if I fully know what was important to me. I think it's easy to say, I want to cure hunger and do all these things. We all want that. What really drives me, and it takes all these experiences, all these successes. It takes the falling in your face. Yep. The biggest mistake I've made is, and you and I have talked about this, the idea of not wanting to ever fall on my face. If I did, covered it up. Yep. Because I feel like that to me, that's a fear. That fear of failure is not a good thing. Though I teach my kids, you want to fall. Why do you fall down? So you can learn to get back up, right? Why do you this is a gift, right? When you make mistakes, we want you making mistakes. But yet me as the adult in the room, I haven't always lived that way. And, so I think that's part of the learning experience is understand you're going to flop, but you're going to learn from the flops, right? I got a saying, I saw this a long time ago, but, a smooth sea never made a skillful, it says sailor. I always say yachtsman. I don't like power boating over sailboating, but either one. A smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. And if you think about that, that couldn't be more, it's so true, right? Absolutely. When things are easy, when we can sit back, we're not very creative. When things are difficult, we have to reinvent ourselves and be innovative. Yeah. That's one of the benefits of right now. I see with we're watching the markets move and rates on inflation, all these things. This is when innovation comes about. Whatever that is, I don't know what that's going to be. It doesn't come when we're all fat and happy. We're fat and happy. We're not that creative. When we're hungry, we're backs against the wall. This is where we get creative. So, I've kind of answered your question in more general terms, but when I look back, the most important moments of my life came from those hardest decisions, or the times I felt like the biggest failure. In hindsight, I wish it's hard when you're in the moment to be like, hey, this is going to be great at some point, because you don't see it. I have the benefit of hindsight, right?
Yeah.
But I think for me, go ahead.
No, you always learn more from your failures than you do your success. You just don't want to, in the middle of it, it's hard to lick your wounds and recognize you're going to sit on that other moment. Here's something I don't know if you recognize. I would have you maybe expound on it a little bit, but it's interesting because when you think about what you went in to do from a Wall Street standpoint is no different than what a professional athlete thinks that they're getting into sports to do. And yet you kind of came full circle with Pro Athletes Direct, where you were like, hey, no, I want to help these guys and gals and maybe even celebrities. I don't know how far that went when you did it or if you're still doing it, but I mean, I want to help protect them from some of that same blindness you even had on yourself. It just was compounded in dollars.
No, totally. I mean, to me, it's from the outside, this is a fixable problem, right? And I saw that, and that was one of the benefits of, I think, appreciating. It's very easy for me to, I don't know, when I can look back, I've talked about in our 20, 21, 22, life was different then. And if I was handed a big fat check and knew I had more checks coming, it's very easy to say, well, I would have done all this planning and I would have, funded my retirement plan, all these things. Maybe not. Maybe I would have had a really good time and not protected that money, because if you only know that, where you're like, well, it's always going to be this way, right? Yeah. Well, it's not. The average, it's about 3.5 years the average athlete's got to at their maximum earning capacity, and to replace 50 cents on the dollar is going to be difficult for most of them. It's just not going to happen. So you got to, and this is one of the things we coached in this regard. And this comes back from things I learned in my 20s, was we would teach these athletes, that they earn the money. So they're not like lottery winners. Lottery winners, and I'm not bad-mouthing lottery winners. You win the lottery, great, but protect that money. But that's beside the point. These athletes, when I was running around my buddies and not sitting at the basketball hoop, shooting 500 free throws, doing layups, missing out on things, these athletes are entrepreneurs in every sense. They literally were and we don't look at them that way because we don't think of it, oh, it's a sport, it's fun. They're working their tails off to ever monetize a sport. You got the gifted athletes, doesn't matter. They still had to work hard. You got the people the workers, who I appreciate those people even more, that work to get to that position. So we teach them, you earn this money. And when we look at, this, I mean, your whole business is built around this. When we've earned something, we treat it a little bit differently than if it's just given to us, Absolutely. Right? Because you got skin in the game. It's got some meaning to you. And that shift of just how you look at it, all of a sudden now you're a little more protective of your assets, of what it looks like, a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. So this goes back to, this is good. See, this is kind of like a therapy session for me. I'm looking back, I'm like, oh wait, this did kind of play into how I got here and how I got here. So yeah, I like it.
As you guys have been, so here's the thing that I know, there's no such thing as straight up. You've been writing the book, you've been putting together Ask My Advisor kind of as and beginning to have some success and really kind of moving that forward. What have been maybe the biggest surprises that set you back, that kind of like, oh, you got to kind of like, I really want to do this. I got a vision to do this, but you hit some roadblocks. What have been some of that along the way of doing this?
Well, I mean, a big one was, being really full with I think a shoe wallet, and think about my focus on that business. That was the first, when I was a financial advisor with Payne Weber and Oppenheimer, you worked essentially for yourself. You had the managing director oversaw, but for the most part, you're working for yourself. But I took, this company from nothing. It was an idea. A shoe wallet had been around for decades. Had the domain, start selling online, and then I started doing the private label. So I built that from nothing to something. And but things, you're when your focus goes on all that, it gets shifted away from some other things too. And so I was not living a balanced life in that regard. And some people took hits because of that. I went through, in the midst of that, a divorce. And had two young children, and we're lucky, a blended family. So I'm remarried. We've got a son. Megan's a great stepmom to Nick and Sophia. She's remarried, great husband. He brought a kid in from a previous marriage, and they have a daughter together. So we're like this crazy 2022 Brady bunch, which is funny because we've all got, and then his ex-wife, and she's remarried. We're all friends and text and, carpool and take care of the kids together. And he and I've coached, the stepdad and I've coached teams together, basketball, football teams. So that, that was a failure at that time, right? Because you don't expect that. I'm proud, when I look back at it, it goes back to in the midst of things, you're not like, man, this really sucks right now. But boy, a year from now, 5 years down the road, I'm going to be talking to Eric. We're going to be really just gloating about how great this was.
Yeah.
But you learn a whole heck of a lot. And one of the things when you put the kids, really let the kids lead the way of what if you teach the kids that you set out to go a certain way and life zigs and zags, and you find a way to make things work. And one of the sayings I have with my kids, I've had since every one of them are 0, we find a way. We don't know what that way is. We find a way. So whatever it is, we go this way, we find a way. And that's been the thread that's, helped us as far as a blended family go, as far as not only make it work and make it work pretty darn well, but the kids have seen you do hit walls. You go through things you don't expect, but you get through it, and things can get better because of it. You got to work at it. It doesn't happen automatically. And I'm proud that, especially with all the coaching I've done, I told you I've just finished my 31st season of coaching the kids in some between football, flag football, basketball, soccer, not lacrosse. My daughter and my youngest plays lacrosse. I have not picked up, not a sport I ever played, but I think it's a very cool sport. But you learn, these are things you learn, and we've been able to be an example for a lot of families, because there's other families that have similar situations, and some just aren't, for whatever, they don't have that. They're not that lucky, or maybe it's early on, or maybe there's resentment, all these things. And I've been really proud for us as not just my wife and our 3 kids, but everybody involved in this blended family, to be that a model of how it can work and how you can make it work. And that's an important thing. People have to see, I think when you can show you can make something work, people got something to work towards, right? Yeah. And the challenge is you want to even do it better, but just show that you can work through these tough things. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. We're going to run out of time here soon, Brian. It's been a great visit. Is there anything you haven't got to share that you wanted to make sure that we told in your story today?
Well, really, as I'm sitting at the barbecue with all your buddies, I got, just on this rant about myself. I'll wrap up with this. All the experiences of when I was in high school, watching the movie Wall Street and seeing these cool stockbrokers, to high school or college, doing the cold call, to moving to Chicago, working in the CBOT, becoming a financial advisor, getting in a completely different industry, and then getting back into it, coaching these advisors. The Ask My Advisor method, what I'm so excited about is it's a culmination of all those experiences, me being on the financial advisor side, me being on the coaching side, me being on the client side of advisors, right? I've got a pretty good coverage of every side of the equation. And we talk about this in the book, being a frictionless way to connect with the people in your clients' lives, your best clients' lives, excuse me. So the idea is we want to, number one, strengthen your best relationships, and then also help the people in those your top relationships, the people that most closely resemble your top clients. And, it's interesting. I mean, we've talked about the whole idea of COVID, kind of, there's the benefits that come from the tough things. And with COVID, we appreciate, I think, time a whole lot more, because we went through a window of time where there was, a lot of uncertainty, and, you appreciate in your business. When we look into our business, do we want to be working with, hustling to be getting every possible client we can get? Or do we want to work with the people that we can help the most and we enjoy working with the most? Yeah. Well, the latter is what I think most people would agree on. How do we do that? And, by using Q&A, the Ask My Advisor method, I don't think we even talked about this, but we're education-based marketing at our core. Yeah. So we share 3 ways to implement it for, advisors, people interested in it. One's a free way. One's a way you literally could just use your email. and we give you the PS you can use in your emails to introduce and invite your clients to this. The second way is a do-it-yourself way where you plug in existing services to use the Ask My Advisor method. Or the third way, which is oddly the one we really prefer because we are a software company, hit the easy button. It's done for you. In 15 minutes, you can have a Q&A portal ready to share with your top clients. But we talk about that with the blueprint we share, a free blueprint, and then we've got a webinar that goes through all three. And that's really what the book is. The book runs through all the 3 different ways to use this method. But we think, I think you'll agree with this. When you look at all the uncertainty, experts, accountants, attorneys, financial advisors, realtors, venture capitalists, sports agents, they're in place to help people that aren't in any of those roles, right? This is your job. This is the essence of what you do. I don't think there's ever been a time where advisors are more essential than they are now to guide people through this uncertainty, because we're getting hit from multiple sides here. And so to me, I can't think of a better way than through Q&A to help bridge that gap, bring those two sides together. So we're really excited. We're excited about the book. We're excited about the software, pulling it all together. And it was, fun sharing a little bit about the story with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and ask this. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, like they want to know more about your Ask My Advisor method or get a copy of the book or kind of follow the things that you've got going on, what's the best way to do that?
I would go to, we've got a link. I'll just put it, Paradigm. Is it fine if we just use out the end of the link just so people know that they came from?
Can you do Redefining Success?
Perfect. So I'll give it. So the URL is tip.askmyadvisor.co /
Redefining Success. All
together. And so we'll have on that page, there'll be a link that goes to the Ask My Advisor referral method blueprint. It's a one page front and back. It looks like, here's a hard copy of what it looks like, but it comes up, it's digital.
Oh.
This provides you exactly what the method is. It covers the amount of reach you have right now with your top 10 clients, that top 20%. It's massive, and it shows you an exact way to communicate with those clients to open them up to Q&A with you, which is the best way. If someone's asking us what we do, what the Ask My Advisor method does, if there's 5 steps to go from stranger to a top client, and there's 5 steps to get there, we're that first essential, we're a connector. And the unique thing about what we're doing is we're a connector through your best clients. So there's something a little bit special about those people that come through that channel that makes it a little bit unique. So
that's fantastic. So tip.askmyadvisor.co / Redefining Success.
Perfect. And then there'll be the blueprint on there, and then also access to the webinar. The webinar is our primary education system. So
fantastic. Brian, I told you this was coming, so I was giving you a little bit more time to kind of think through. So my final question always to every single guest: in 3 generations, what do you hope your great-grandchildren remember about you?
In 3 generations, so you did. I cheated a little bit because you gave it to me at the beginning. To be honest with you, I come from a family business. I'd want to Ask My Advisor still running and us bringing those people together, because the thread, to be honest with you, I think the advisors taking care of their best clients to help them get through the hardest time we've ever been through in the last 100 years, or one of, maybe not have it, but a challenging time to help pull people through is going to save. It's going to keep families together. It's going to protect them. It's going to help them put a plan in place. It's going to help remove stress. So when I say that, I don't just say that like, hey, advisors are essential. I don't say that lightly. I say that it's very important. So what that becomes from here, it only gets bigger from here. And the amount of people that we can impact with this small seed now, it can be everybody. Because again, we're talking about your top clients. So I'm really excited about the potential to help pull people through. And it's funny, but it's all through questions, right? Questions identify the pain. You're in the pain business, Eric. Whether you know it or not, you are in the pain, but you're a doctor. You're a surgeon and helping people solve those problems, solve those questions. So
Absolutely. Brian, thank you so much for making the time to be here. It's been incredible. Thank you for making the time.
Appreciate it, Eric. Nice. Thank you for the time.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for being here with us. We will be back with more stories of redefining success next week. God bless you. Have a fantastic day.